Okay, so thank you everybody for coming to this panel today. And hello everybody on Zoom as well. So my name is Gordan, and I'll be the chair of the panel today. So on DPRK Relations Theory, this is, I think, a really interesting panel. We are really moving into a different junction of history with COVID, with, and changes in the regional security environment, changes in the regional security environment. So how we best understand North Korea's reactions and use North Korea as a case study for international relations theory is very important in this area. On our presenters, we've got, I think, a very interesting lineup. Firstly, Dr. Suehyun will be presenting on a nexus of populism and foreign policy, where the two government engage, with Mr. Yeung on North Korea's alliance with diplomacy in China, Ms. Firstyarinda Valentina Indraswari on the design of confidence building measures on South Korea, North Korea 2016 neoliberalism perspective, and myself on political insecurities, the COVID era North Korean strategy. So topics on Sino-North Korean relations, populism and DPRK foreign policy, neoliberalism and inter-ROK relations, and political security and engagement. So all these are very interesting topics, and I think this will be a very interesting this panel will see as such. Each speaker will have around 60 minutes in order to schedule the style file. So myself, followed by Dr. Yeung, Dr. Jung, and then Ms. Indraswari. Afterwards, there will be a discussion led by Dr. Lonnie introducing himself before opening the floor to the Q&A from anyone in the room and Zoom. Okay, so.
Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today I'm going to present our research topic entitled North Korea's Alliance Diplomacy against China from 1992 to 2022. In my presentation, I will first introduce my research background and the question, and then I will talk about my research design, alliance for diplomacy, and then I will talk about how the North Korean alliance, the alliance community with China apply to this framework. Since the Cold War, after the Cold War, North Korea has suffered from a diplomatic hardship and isolation because Russia and China reduced its support to North Korea. Even though China did not terminate its alliance relationship with North Korea, China's support to North Korea increased gradually. And this circumstances that North Korea thought it is important to develop its nuclear capability in order to ensure its regime survival and vigilance. And during further period, North Korea tried to attract the US attention in order to obtain more international support by missile and nuclear provocation. However, North Korea's behavior attracted Beijing's dissatisfaction because they may trap Beijing into unnecessary conflict between US and North Korean states. To prevent China being entrapped by North Korea, China has to reduce its support to North Korea. This situation is very particular after the leadership transition in 2012. In fact, North Korea is deeply reliant on China's economic support and security guarantee. Without China's support, North Korea survival will be jeopardized. However, it is interesting that why does North Korea keep on having provocation without considering China the opposite? Yes. And to answer this question, North Korea can take advantage of this and give critical value to China's border security in conversion China for support. And the logic which is a problem. When China reduces support, then North Korea suffers from value fear, and conversion China by relationship against the US. That escalated the situation. Then during the situation,
I'm so sorry. I thought you were just
during the situation that the US will intensify its alliance or economic sanction against North Korea. So China is going to prevent in order to preserve its border security, China will provide support or retain its support to North Korea in the alliance game, so that North Korea can avoid the advantage. Next page. But there are some interesting questions we have to discuss. Actually, I agree that Beijing is dissatisfied with the North Korean provocation, but Beijing declared it will not fundamentally abandon North Korea. And the global times present this position. So how do we measure abandonment and side in alliance politics? And it is necessary for North Korea to convert China to release support. And the final question is, so in which condition North Korea needs to convert China? I will develop my research framework or alliance coercive policy to explore these questions. And This is the argument of my research. It's called alliance collective diplomacy. And this model aims to explore how a weaker member keep its patron support in order to for this abandoned society. In my research, I argue that this separation is the most effective way for weaker member or the junior ally to keep its patron support, because these the traditional measures have this shortcomings. For instance, returning to internal balancing. That means the weaker member or the junior ally try to enhance its defense capability against its opponent. However, the weaker member cannot guarantee that it has sufficient power to counterbalance its deficit or exceed the alliance or join other alliance. This is also impossible if other parties consider that state a threat or insecurity about all the system. That is a dichotomy. Even if the two campaigns, we cannot agree. And also, a conciliatory policy to the adversary, the methods still can guarantee that the adversary would favor that state. Consider that North Korea neither can compromise with the US or show its goodwill to the US, but North Korea cannot obtain some interest from the US, for instance, sanctions removal. And the final part is that very other agenda to keep other support. In the symmetrical alliance, the weaker member is more difficult to use as it relies on alliance to ensure agreeing the right need for the next. So there are some conditions that the weaker member will adopt this measure against its paper. First is the common adversary. As we all know, the alliance formation is based on the common opponent. And then second is the geopolitical value of the member enjoys that contribute to the alliance, which means that the paper need to retain the alliance because the weaker member has its geopolitical value. Consider North Korea case, China need to preserve the alliance with North Korea because North Korea is a geopolitical buffer that prevents the US from enlarging its territories in Northeast Asia. And then these 2 points is about the power asymmetry between weaker members and the patron, and whether there's alternative policy choice. It matters about whether the junior ally relies on the alliance to ensure its security and peace. And then in this paper, I also propose that for indicated the measure the degree of abandonment fear in alliance politics. First is that the military whether it means that where the weaker member in our situates in a conflict with an opponent that is unescapable, which means that we cannot reduce the value immediately. Second and third is about the power relations between the opponent as well as the adversary. And the final part is whether there is alternative policy choice to pay risks, which means that whether the weaker member can reduce the value between other than alliance possibilities and using internal balancing or other techniques and so on. And then next. And then there in this framework, there are 2 types of abandonment fear. One is moderate abandonment fear, and another one is intense abandonment fear. And moderate abandonment fear is that we can remember may still receive this patron support, and we still have alternative policy choice, so that they may not need to counter its opponent solely. So in this case, the member will end up internal balancing to against to reduce its abandonment fear. However, when a weaker or when a junior ally is in intense abandonment fear, that means that it needs to counter its opponent and its ally simultaneously. In this case, that member will adopt alliance for diplomacy against its patron to keep the patron's support. Yes. And there are several measures that the weaker member can adopt against its patron. First, it's trying to disobey its patron and undermines the patron's geopolitical interests. For instance, North Korea commences a nuclear test and missile test, try to enroll China's geopolitical interests and try to intense threat level in Northeast Asia. And so the second part is reduce the claims that you end up conciliatory policy with adversary. As we all know, during the Xi Jinping era, President Xi Jinping tried to engage with President Park there. And as North Korea tried to escalate the threat level in Northeast Asia, that reduced the space for Xi Jinping and Park to strengthen their cooperation because of the Southern system. But I will talk about it later. And then finally, is that provoke adversary and to solidify the adversary alliance. In the same case, when North Korea keep on completing provocation and the US and South Korea strengthen their alliance and try to make Europe China's interest. And in this case, China will ensure its alliance relationship with North Korea in order to preserve its existing interests. Then North Korea will not be abandoned by China. So next thing. The case study, I will apply this model into I will talk about North Korea alliance created with China from 1992 to 2022, and then I will create 3 episodes. I divided into 3 episodes. One is 1992 to 2012. This starts from the post-Cold War era, and it's in 1992. It's about China established diplomatic relations with South Korea. At that time, China still retains its alliance and relationship with North Korea, but China's support to North Korea is reduced gradually, including there is no summit before 2000, and it refers that China's committed to carry out and sustain low price economic support to North Korea. At that time, the US tried to reduce its military presence in Asia, but the US had tried to oppose US developed its nuclear capability by sanctioning by military strategy of military needs. Okay, next page. But at that time, the North Korea's level of capability was moderate because China still maintained its minimum support to North Korea. And at that time, US tried to pressure North Korea from not developing nuclear weapons, but its US aggression was considered by both South Korea and China. When the US proposed sanctions against North Korea, China tried to oppose suggestion. When the US pretended to launch military drill against North Korea, so also opposed that. So in this case, North Korea adopted internal balancing to alleviate its including the development its nuclear capability and neglect and try to comply with the IAEA and withdraw the NPT and nuclear non-proliferation treaties, and then the US and North Korea signed the delivered agreement in 1994. And then episode 2 is that start from the Bush administration. During that time, the US against North Korea increased because the US included North Korea into this war on terror campaign. During the Bush administration, the US tried to engage with China to seek cooperation and prevent the North Korean threat. And although China shows cooperating so it's willingness to cooperate with the US and handle North Korean issues, China opposed the US from imposing pressure on North Korea and still emphasized support to North Korea, including its economic engagement in the Northeast region. And actually, there are 2 purposes of this economic engagement. First, it's to improve China's Northeast region the economic of Northeast region. And the second one is use this economic needs to constrain North Korea. And then next point. And during that time, the US North Korea was moderate also. And during that time, the US tried to impose pressure against North Korea, including sanctions, including sanctions and military drill. China tried to oppose that. For instance, during the BDA, the Bank of China Asia case, is the financial sanction against the bank in Macau. The Chinese government tried to mediate during the dispute to convince the US to remove sanctions and return the deposit to North Korea. Also, during North Korea attacked South Korea in 2009 and 2010, the Chinese government opposed that the military drill between the US and South Korea. Okay. And then the North Korea respond to this actions also about internal balancing, including nuclear tests. And then, as I mentioned, North Korea and South Korea after the leadership transition in both US and South Korea. Okay. And then episode 3 is starting from the leadership transition in both China and North Korea in 2012. During that time, North Korea increased gradually. And the US intensified its pressure against North Korea during the period, including the amplified alliance system and economic sanctions. And then also China how to isolate North Korea also involves more pressure against North Korea, including actively participating in the sanction campaign or engage with South Korea, as I mentioned before, during Xi Jinping era, as he engaged with the Parliament in order to pressure North Korea and next day. And then during that time, North Korea's advantage was intense because North Korea needed to overcome pressure from the US and China simultaneously. So, in response to both pressure and pressure from both US and China, North Korea adopted alliance coercive diplomacy, including nuclear tests in September 2016, which against China, and they try to reduce the flights for the US and Korea to cooperate with China over persuading North Korea's threat. As I mentioned before, the US tried to before the started system in South Korea, then try to reduce space for China and the US to cooperate with North Korea issue, and also nuclear tests in September 2017. It's again for China and the US to keep China support. So this is a pattern of the North Korean alliance in Asia with China from 1992 to 2022. As we can see that when North Korea comes with intense so North Korea alliance coercive diplomacy against China. And this is the conclusion. Yes, North and China would be one of the targets of North Korean provocation only when North Korea is supported as a feminine society. So the case is most obvious here to see here. Okay, and in my research, the significance of this academic significance and its policy significance. And for theoretical and
I apologize. Sorry.
also sorry. In my research, I provide that to measure abandonment theory in alliance conflict and talk about how a weaker member or the junior ally keep his any support to reduce his abandonment theory. For policy significance, and actually, we all know South Korea and the US trying to engage with China and to seek cooperation with their own North Korean issue. But given that North Korea can crush China by using its political advantage, this latter is limited. So the possibility of both sides of cooperation is reduced. In this case, the US and South Korea stand up against North Korea. Again, that's one more regulation.
So thank you. I'll be presenting on ontological insecurities in the COVID era, reconceptualizing North Korean engagement strategy. So essentially how we think about engagement in North Korea. So I'll start with the context of my research puzzle. So I start with the premise that there's essentially an outside fixation on traditional physical security dilemma in the Peninsula. So what I mean by this is the escalating regional security environment, realistic misogynistic military exercises between US ROK and North Korea. So drawing from ontological security literature, we understand that the state inherently seeks ontological security, so security of being alongside traditional physical security goals, and this provides important ramifications for us to consider when we are thinking about engagement. So since 2020, the president will have COVID announced in North Korea, and then in 2022 with the domestic outbreak, they've had seasonal natural disasters such as floods, landslides, etc. They have also announced a 5-year plan and 8-party congress with WPK in January 2021. And of course, alongside the escalation in the Southwest military violence, heightening US Chinese and the Ukraine war. So with the advent of COVID pandemic, and there's been an evolution of North Korea's West. And this has important ramifications to consider. So how does North Korea's evolving ontological security in the COVID era shape the conceptualization of engagement strategy? So of course, this assumes that engagement is the path forward, because the cycles of antagonism and peace. But this assumes that, and as I believe that engagement should be the path forward. Next slide. So ontological security starts essentially from psychoanalysis with Ronald Kang, before moving to sociology and intelligence, and then transposition into international relations theory with constructivists and Greg Steele, Jennifer Mason and Katrina involved. And the main differences, if I were to really summarize it, is that unit of analysis changes. And psychoanalysis is starts with the individual. If we move into international relations, it goes to the state. So this assumes that states do have an ontological self that questions their being. But what is this being? What is ontological security? It is essentially a fully embodied self. It is constancy in your habits and routine, mitigated anxieties, continuous control biographies. But we need to realize as well that this is an ideal, this is a missing pole, right? It is a right which we aspire to, it is largely temporary when we feel this of security. And in this presentation, I take it that we largely understand it from Jung, and it is with Jung's teachers where I understand not with this program. So I think the definition I use as a projection of answer to four fundamental questions that all will be in some ways to address. I take it from Philip lectures, who draw very closely from the beginnings. And these are the criteria which we then understand how we can integrate appropriate engagement boundaries from them. So starting with existence, right? It's the awareness of one's position in their external reality. It is the extent of trust that one faces in the continuity of their position within their environment. And we observe this through, the routines which I use in the everyday habits of preparing. Secondly, relations, the ability to maintain stable relationships with others, allies, into parties, or antagonists. Thirdly, financial ability to manage the fear of death is indeterminacy at the moment. And fourthly, autobiography, ability to maintain continuous self-identity through reflexively selected narratives. Right, next slide. So the methodology I use is I source firstly from the English language version of the PCA. I do a critical discourse analysis of two corpuses. The first corpus A, looks at only speeches and letters spoken aloud or identified by Jung with references to COVID in some form or another, which I'll elaborate on later. And so this draws out primary discursive elements of the COVID era through a close reading derived from logical security. The second corpus looks at all speeches and letters spoken aloud in the same context, from first generation to current generation. And this analyzes frequencies, common clusters, and keywords across nouns, adjectives, and verbs that are used. So why COVID? Right? Why do I choose epidemic or epidemic as the central variable? Because I want to observe how in response to a singular crisis, North Korea has reacted in stage response, and doing so we can integrate how North Korea's policy has evolved and how we can reconstruct again tailored to that specific goals. Next slide. So I'll go through an overview of my findings. In total, there were 13 speakers that mentioned the academic or health in terms of the medical state. So this is my reference to COVID. So I do health. Usually, sometimes they use health in terms of healthy party spirit, right? Which is not what we want. So in order of importance, we have orange rows, the key speakers with the main evidence COVID new era. We have the dead rows that context specific speakers. So what I mean by this is speakers related to agriculture or speakers related to war veterans or Jung. And then finally, we have white rows that are acceptance. And there's just one in this set, which is the opening speech of the 8th Congress of the WPK. So this essentially describes the preparations for the Congress and then the substance for the concluding speech. Next slide. So there are two key speakers. We've got the concluding speech of the 8th Congress of the WPK in 12 January 2021 and the policy speech of the 7th session of the 14th SPA DPRK on 8th September 2022, which was just about two months. The reason why the 8th Congress, and these are incidentally also very important speeches in North Korea discussed in the first place. Right? With the 8th Congress of the WPK, North Korea announced a 5-year national economy plan. It was also where some economic globalism was described into the party constitution. But more importantly, it is when we see a very clear delineation of key elements of the new era. These are the three ways of reforms. Firstly, outside socialism or social X, which is essentially the context of the line in, comprised of three main revolutionary political ideologies, or essentially political ideals. These are the people first politics, single-minded unity of the party and the people with the state sentiment, and self-reliance. Secondly, revolutionary traits. The government likes to express pragmatism, wants to enforce pragmatism in policy and methods, creativity, innovation, and advancement, and trust sacrifice and loyalty to the party. Thirdly, he emphasizes areas for improvement in economics, military, and party, which is education, science and technology, health, construction, agriculture, land, rural local communities, mental capital, disaster prevention. We have economic management, organization, and guidance, and this also a party, political organization, leadership and education, and as well nuclear deterrence and convention support. And we can see this exemplified in the speech itself, right? This sentence is particularly clear. The ideals of the people are God single-handedly with themselves alive, appearing like uncooked people, nothing the leadership ability of a party, the fundamental method of strike to the speaker on the masses. And you can see across the entirety of the speech, elements of all the different sectors being elaborated and how they should be applied with revolutionary traits, all the qualified, etc. Metal chemical industries, organized guidance, and all the rest of it. Next slide. But when we apply it to context, right, how have these discursive elements been applied in the subsequent speeches? And the subsequent speeches actually follow a very familiar pattern, which is in the structure. Firstly, elaboration of the specific achievements of X in terms of maybe union, agricultural union, or trade union. Secondly, the affirmation of good work of X to abide by three political ideals and traits. And thirdly, more general comments on improving on these methods, maybe in other sectors as well, different traits. And so importantly, now that there's a visualization of the structure, it is actually the metaphorical linkages between the narratives and myths woven when you apply the discursive elements A with B, the context of question. And that is of relevance because they have normative value. These narratives have normative value in guiding how they should be understood, despite its perceived exaggeration and repetition. And why is this important, right? Because number one, these narratives that had excessive signifiers that states can collectively draw from and utilize for a variety of different agendas. Secondly, they are self-affirmative over greater temporal presence, and which renders them accepted for all its gargantuan articulation and oversimplified meanings, right? And it's also thirdly constituted and legitimizing, binding the narrative with reference to political construct. So we think that how has COVID been bringing to people? What are the symbolic elements that are here? And does this differ from other crises in modern society? Next slide. And so the key question is what is sought to be understood when you combine these discursive elements with the content. And these are the 3 points. I'll elaborate on the first two. Firstly, the symbolic importance of achieving victory over monumental national goals across with the revolutionary problem, etc. And these are with 3 main challenges, right? We have COVID in terms of epidemic and public/world health crisis. We have the large scale projects in Pyongyang, which are, for example, 50,000 deaths in 5 years, and the real greenhouse bumper. Secondly, we have the generational framing and historical parallels of events in the past, the Bangladesh Liberation War, post-war recovery, especially. Next slide. And if we look at examples in context of speeches, for example, in COVID-19, with reference to COVID-19, speech, national meeting of the reviewing emergency and epidemic work. You see, the harder the times are, enable substances to display an invincible mind that others can do that. Genuine public health workers and patients in the era who are not different from the frontline residents of the days of our era. With reference to construction, you see significant monuments symbolic of most hardware and employers that pay citizens and offspring who will remember down through the generations the heroes of our era overcoming the worst trial they were. So we see the ties towards both the sacrifice and the need to achieve victory over significant challenges, as well as harkening back to the historical glory days where other revolution was. Next slide. So again, agricultural, rural, we see Bangladesh Liberation War, era of great search. We see with reference to trade unions, miraculous victories and sea changes achieved populist construction, preceding generations and follow. Next slide, please. And we see reference to war, right? A tradition of struggle with Argentina emulating from one decade to the next. World health crisis, unprecedented in history and protected technology. I know that's much more than those in the wartime situation of the past. And inheriting the great heroic spirit of the victorious wartime generation. So essentially, this culminates in my third insight from the application context of these speeches, which is that it provides the justification of their part as a nation thus far. And this is in 2 forms, right? Hostile socialism and all the elements which I described earlier, as well as the development of nuclear deterrence. Next slide, please. When we look at the second key speech, which is a policy speech of the Democrat of the 14th Spark, in September 2022, and you see that our generation will not persuade immediately visible improved environment for the economic life, and the cost of giving up nuclear weapons, guarantees the security of the government and the public. Nor will we change our choice, even if it will be experiencing great difficulties, which means to say that even if there were more crises, they would still do it. Right? Our republic's nuclear forces represent the destiny of the country. We do not feel oppressed. We are fully able to live by our own efforts in our own way, even in these circumstances. Which means to say that actually these crises become formative constituted blocks within what forms their ontological security in the first place. Next slide. Looking at corpus D, when I do a corpus analysis of all the speakers, 2020, we see in adjectives, right, in the top 50, revolutionary and socialist appearing very high up. With nouns, party, people, construction, revolution, development, war, epidemic. These are all elements that are very, very, very common. And with verbs, we see struggle, building, working, advance. So we see a lot of references, which means to say that not only with reference to the epidemic or with COVID, these elements appear, but across the entirety of this represented. Next slide. So therefore, what do these elements entail for conceptualizing economic engagement strategy in this period of the COVID era? Now, through integration with the fundamental questions of OS, we can integrate several guiding principles. Firstly, identification of sectors and thematic elements of interest for alignment. If we understand autobiography as the ability to maintain continuous self-identity through reflexiveness and narratives, then the initiation of the new era of self-autonomism with the ideals of people first, single-heartedly against self-reliance comes to mind immediately. And so with that comes the sectors which one emphasizes a lot, right? For example, agriculture and national disaster. So we can find mutual interests, such as maybe green technologies, climate cooperation, and cooperation. If we understand climate change as the ability to manage the fear of death, its indeterminacy and its unknown, then we can see the constitutive affirmation of the current generation is necessary to be sacrificial, also sacrificial for the future. And last, themes, right? They like grand, large works outside the those that allow for parallel, monumental efforts so that they can show the sacrifice put into this work. So we can see acceptance and giving stage, the emphasis of technology and cooperative projects. Next slide, please. Secondly, it delineates symbolic boundaries that will likely lead to progress and things towards dynamic progress for consideration. If we understand existence and the extent of trust at one basis, continuity of their position within the necessary environment, then the cumulative justification of all the elements mentioned thus far in the presentation towards the development of military deterrence comes to mind. In this sense, conventional military society or other aspects of something more fair would be more, such as warfare. But of course, that it's hard to maybe modern, arguably modern issues in American security or health security. Secondly, we understand relations and the ability to maintain stable relations with others. We can see an ingrained perception of US outing as antagonists. So we can orient towards cooperation and other more neutral partners, whether it seems like Vietnam, Cambodia, Singapore, or even towards nations in Scandinavia. We can also look towards bilateral, multilateral efforts, or even multilateral initiatives with specific task-focused institutions designed for expectations. So I hope that this presentation demonstrates a creative theoretical application to a policy standpoint, and I hope it helps to reconceptualize a different way of approaching engagement, at least to think about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon. Very nice to be here to share my research here. Researcher who had great interest in North Korean matters. I had a PhD degree in North Korean studies, but my interest goes beyond North Korea. It covers also international political economy. Okay, let me start my presentation. So, as you can see, the title of this research wanted to examine the relationship between populism and foreign policy under Kim Jong regime, and how during Kim Jong period populism can be linked linked to the establishment of foreign policy that is the main research question. Actually, around the world, it was a trend that we had a series of populist politicians since the late 2000s. And since these populist-based political leaders are assumed to project their shared general characteristics as populist into their foreign policy, I think it's very relevant to pay attention to populism's role in international relations in general, and how it can apply into both Korean politics. Moreover, so I think that populism is reflected in the people first principle proposed by Kim Jong-un. And once this kind of populism is set in North Korean foreign policy, I think it is not easy to change the course, because particularly in North Korean case, the leader Kim Jong-un is expected to reign for an extended period of time. So I think we need to pay attention to the role of populism in North Korea. So the purpose of this manuscript is largely twofold. First, it tracks the rise of people first principle and how it is related to North Korean foreign policy. Secondly, it attempts to predict how populism will affect North Korean future foreign policy direction. So in populism in national politics is very much discussed nowadays. Since we have a lot of populist leaders around the world. And populism can be defined in various ways. Actually, there are not a set definition of populism, but many scholars kind of agree on two key features. One is the central place and role attributed to the people as the source of democratic legitimacy. And secondly, the antagonism between the people against elite or establishment. Those are two key features that scholars in populism propose to define populism. And so populism is very much used to study the domestic rather than the politics. But now we are linking populism to international relations. So how can we make the link between the two? There are still very little agreement on the influence of populism in foreign policy, but definitely populism can affect the country's international relations, because if we take, for example, Peninsula's first image, the characteristics, populist characteristics of the leader is very important in forming foreign policy in this country. And also, populist regimes, the diplomatic practice can matter a lot. This is, so the first is the individual characteristics of the populist leader itself, and the second is the regime, how, so if you borrow the Peninsula's second image, the populist regime, how populist regime, they mingle with other countries and in international politics. There should be some characteristics that is why scholars linking populism to foreign policy. So if you look at populism during the Jung period, so there is people first principle. I think it is incubated in two stages. I'm not really so in two stages. So as soon as he came to power, he suggested the people first principle. And also he proposed anti-corruption discourse as early as January 2013. And in the second stage, so I think anti-corruption means anti-elite. So Kim Jong-un emphasized the people, and he made evidence between the people and the elite. So the first stage starting at early age of January 2013 that proposed anti-corruption discourse. And then in the second stage, the people first principle has been developed as a guiding principle and both the ideal in North Korean construction of this unique form of socialism. So Kim Jong-un started to use the people first principle as a guiding principle in every major policy speech that he made. I think in general that the people became the keyword of the Kim Jong-un era, replacing Sung-gun, the very first during the Kim Jong-un era. Right? So I think there were three crises of legitimacy during Kim Jong-un period, and then he used the populism to overcome this legitimacy crisis. I think we can go to figure 1, page 13.
Figure 1, page 13.
Here we go. So the first crisis can be the cessation of power period. So, really Kim Jong-un is power, he needs to establish his power, and I think that was the very first crisis that he faced. And he stipulated, for example, nuclear state in the revised constitution in April 2012. And he adopted the boldness of consolidating the position that nuclear weapon state for self-defense at the 7th session of the SPA, called SPNA, out of April 1st, 2013. So very early, he used the solution of nuclear state as kind of solution to as soon as he came to power, 2013. And second crisis, I think it was after that of economy of 2019. I do know that North Korea expected a lot from the North Korea US summit economy held in 2019, and actually that summit had no results. And then there is a testimony that when it finished without results, should be there. Kim Jong-un kind of was shocked, and many North Korean people was shocked. That was a testimony of the ambassador, UK ambassador to North Korea. So that definitely was one of the major risk crisis during the Kim Jong-un period. And then right after how he overcame was Kim Jong-un delivered policy speech on socialist construction and involved in policies of government republic and presentation and fifth session of routine SPA held in April 12, 2019. It was kind of first time the Suehyun, who's been a leader, made a public speech at the SPA in 29 years since he was founded in 1990. And he chose especially the SPA at the venue. SPA, North Korea is considered as a organ, and then people are elected to be member of SPA. So I think he especially chose the SPA as the venue to deliver this message to the people. And regarding major food policy issues, so that venue was very, very intensively selected, and then he delivered the message to the people directly. using this kind of format. So they are often, so the third crisis can be aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic crisis in 2020. As David Kang, because this pandemic was very important issue of Korea. When we look at how Jung overcame his game, he delivered the policy speech. And he made law, he passed the law of state policy on the nuclear forces at the second session of Protest being held on September 8, 2022. So, after major crisis happened, he chose the venue of SPA and he directly addressed the people and then he used nuclear weapon, foreign policy to kind of link all those populism vector to foreign policy. And then what the populism can kind of role the populism play in this foreign policy. And I think we can give an advantageous position in diplomatic negotiation when North Korea do diplomacy with other country, it can give an advantageous position to North Korea because according to audience cost, for example, by tying the hands of, by using tying hand strategy, the North Korea can increase the state bargaining leverage vis-a-vis foreign policy compromise. And also, populism can serve to elevate the public unity by assuming the will of people. So, I think largely populism plays two roles in foreign policy. So, the conclusion part. So, I think the use of populism in Korea in the foreign affairs has resulted in linking those kinds of diplomacy with its president. And for example, North Korea's declaring its status of nuclear weapon state to the constitution. It can reduce greatly the possibility of pursuing the nuclearization negotiations with diplomacy, for example. So I think it will be much more difficult now to negotiate the nuclearization with North Korea, definitely. And in other diplomatic issues, such as NKR relations or the North Korea-US relations, because there is populist factor behind, it will be much difficult for North Korea to start a new negotiation or to start a more flexible. Using the populist factor may all make it definitely difficult for North Korea to change its diplomatic behavior or adopt more flexible diplomacy tactics.
Thank you, dear speakers and discussions. Today, I would like to present the topic related to the decline of confidence building measures of South Korea and North Korea around 2008 and 2016. It is from neorealism's perspective. My name is Firstyarinda Valentina Indraswari. I'm currently a PhD student in International Relations GDIS at ITWA Women's University. So today I would like to share about the changing of South Korea policy towards North Korea and what the factors lies behind those policies. This is the background of my presentations, and I will continue right now. This is the overall policies of South Korea toward North Korea. As we can see, that the dynamic situations which South Korea government altered to the North Korea governments. There's a time when the government give a hard policy because of the early situations, which both sides still have hostile conditions. But in the 20s, 2000s, we can see that from the government of Kim Dae-jung and Roh Moo-hyun, there's a lot of achievements got from the both sides, and the Sunshine Policy marked that achievement, followed by the Mount Kumgang tourism's openness and the other industrial complex built by the government, both supported also by the private companies such as Hyundai. But these conditions doesn't take long, even though the current presidents at that time, the Lee Myung-bak took office, and actually he also have a experience as a chairman of Hyundai. He comes up with the conservative policies toward North Korea, which require the denuclearizations of the North Korea nuclear proliferations. And it's also followed by the next government under Park Geun-hye with its trust politics. Even though the name is trust politics, but the situation and the realities at that time with the THAAD placement near the North Korea border also rising a tense toward both sides. So at this point, I would like to stress what factors lies behind the hard policy of South Korea under Lee Myung-bak and Park Geun-hye periods from the neorealism's perspective. This is still ongoing research, so I try to use qualitative, which focus on case study, and then using mixed method analysis. And I have a plan to use further network social analysis to identify and analyze it. The baseline of the conceptual to see the condition from both sides, it's by using confidence building measure. At this time, I specifically use the bilateral of military CBMs, which consists of communications, economic, social, political, and cultural CBMs. And from the historical timeline from my previous research, we can see that there's an increase of confidence buildings amongst two countries. And it started in 20s, since the Kim Dae-jung's era, still rising until Roh Moo-hyun's. But as we can see from Lee Myung-bak presidentials until Park Geun-hye, there's a downline of the graphic. And of course, it's maybe also followed because by the conflict that intensified at that time. Furthermore, since 2000 and 2016, I tried to search from the certain data, and it also support the decline of the CBMs, either from the military dialogue, not from the economic, surprisingly, but from the other one, such as social, cultural, and political. All the data shows the decline of the CBMs. The main questions which asking the factor lies, I try to answer by the findings that under neorealism's perspective, which comes from Meshemer quotients, which the states tend to have an effort to survive under the anarchy situations, under the anarchy system in the international stage. So at that time, during 2008 and 2016, we can see that there's a global situations that not only made South Korea got vulnerability, but also the big powers, the hegemonic powers such as US also got by the global crisis and its impact to other regions such as Europe and Asia too. And the conditions also followed by the instability in Middle East, such there's various conflicts in Lebanon, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, which asked the United States to give more concerns and participations to address those issues. And these conditions made the US attentions towards South Koreans becomes lesser. Of course, the North Korean intensive missiles, which rising during 2008 until 2016, also give a certain. From the inside, we can see that the situations hit the economic of South Korea, such as we can see how the GDP growth has fallen around 4%, and then also the depreciation of won, stock price have declined, the domestic economic activity also shrank, and the unemployed number also increased from 3.1% to 4% in 2009. From the political aspect, from the national, the fragile governments identified at the time as the presidential take place, Lim Yun-bak and Park Geun-hye fulfilled with the scandals issue by its cabinets. From the corruptions and bribery, and it makes the deteriorations of South Korean democracy and trust from the public. But this issue slowly could be countered by the recovery of economic situations and policy by the government too. And from the international aspect, we can see that there's an ups and down also of the alliance relationship. And the deteriorations of relations with the Japan also worse the conditions. This is the specific situation faced by the South Korea that it has to be taken because of those international events, such as the suspended of Mount Kumgang tourist projects, the ban of the Korean visits, the ban of any new further projects at that time, and the restrictions until the close of Kaesong's industrial complex, and also the reunions of separate families. Regarding to that conditions, I also tried to find out what is the government response to recovery itself. So the government tried to examine the situations and prepare for the volatility in capital flows. It also increased mid and long-term efforts to recover fiscal soundness. The government also tried to reinforce the structure of the economy and act preemptively to respond to potential risks. One of the successful strategy that helped South Korea recovery at that time also because of the new growth of green technology. For the international relations, even though the government faced with critical information, critical judgment from the public and international, directly after Lim Yun-bak and Park Geun-hye took place as a presidents, they meet with the U.S. president and commit to a stronger engagement toward the United States. And it also followed by the renewed commitment with Japan at the end of 2015. South Korea also tried to engage with international another arrangements such as Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative. So in these positions, we can see that neorealisms took place toward the conditions that evac South Korea. But at a certain part, such as the economics part of CBMs that we saw the data before, there's an increasing or at least stability of cooperations. When we saw these numbers doesn't decrease added dramatically, but still in the around number 1,000, 1,000.6, 7, and etc. So at these positions, we can see that there's still communication, there's the cooperations between these two countries. So from those conditions, neorealism can explain it. I comes with one of the papers that suggests how we can see that conditions by the terms of state persistence. And it's explained by Dage with the quotes that states are shaped by both internal and external factors, such as ideas or transaction costs that could also continue to justify the state. Still, others argue that the state is primarily a response to continuing external economic vulnerability. So even though there's a hard policy towards North Korea related to the security aspects, but South Korea still believe and still aware that the continuing of economic cooperations, and even though other economic impact also faced by the Korean government, they still want to make the conditions stable and they want to make the transactions not diminished at all. And by other experience from the Britain and its telegraph experience, I also want to capture how this possibility can apply to South Korea and North Korea, because if the political initiatives, the hard policy initiatives such as denuclearization, proliferations are counter-rejected by the North Korea, maybe other issue, other regional, other regulations in international norms could be achieved by both of these actors. And at the end of my presentation, I try to conclude that in this condition, South Korea faces a huge vulnerability from global shocks. And it's because it hasn't have a strong interdependence toward other states. South Korea could be, until this time, we can see that the interdependence is still less with other middle power states, because it depends on the US economic and help. So I suggest that South Korea should think to strengthen certain circle arrangement involving strategic partnerships, not only to the hegemonic states, but also to the middle power states, such as BRIC countries, Taiwan, ASEAN as an organization, and also ASEAN member states as a states, which characteristic has micro financial instrument as a supporting system if the macro financial instruments impact hard by the global crisis. And we can see from the experience, such as Taiwan, Asian countries, with its small and medium enterprise, they can address the situation of global crisis and pass the situations at that time. And for inter-Korea relations, I guess the particular ideas and norms could be built and rearranged more in order to make both relations got better. I think this is more of my presentations. I would like to hear any inputs and comments. Thank you.
Okay, so my first question is for you, Mr. Yeung. So in the COVID era, we see essentially greater economic linkages between China and North Korea, really starting with the trade wars and also communication between two countries. There's also greater discussion of North Korea as a strategic partner for China. So how does this and the component as well for Chinese regional interests, broader regional interests, such as with the Taiwan Straits. So how do these factor into increased anxieties in North Korea?
You mean this kind of Western influence there.
Yeah. Because I believe in your presentation you said North Korea, like this period from 2012 to 2022, is when there's an intense
Yes, there's the factor that actually after, I mean, counting Sunday and after, the relationship actually being, it's not, I would say, we say internationally being closer because the US also being sent further against both countries, so they have and North Korea that time the decrease, right? Because also North Korea need to receive China support, but also China also need to receive local political support, need to be demonstrated, and even Hong Kong usually said that North Korea support China to enforce the national security law and then oppose the US from imposing pressure against China. So in that at the time after Singapore summer and the definitely decreased, right?
Right. So it should mean essentially less likelihood of complications.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Go to the second question.
Okay, the second question I have is for Jung. So, one thing that occurred to me when I was listening to your presentation, this idea that populism has risen in many countries in the world, and it has many different definitions. So you're talking about North Korean populism, and a lot of what you were saying reminded me of kind of like the actions that you can see in China under Xi Jinping with his anti-corruption drive, and the way that he used his anti-corruption rhetoric to basically, I mean, maybe he was actually trying to get rid of corruption. A lot of people think he was just trying to get rid of opponents and challengers. But one of the aspects of it is Chinese people believe, a lot of Chinese people allegedly believe that government corruption is a problem, but they don't think Xi Jinping is responsible for it because he's able to redirect them through populism towards lower level government officials. So it's almost like a way for the government to be responsive to the people without really taking responsibility for the corruption and the situation. So I was just curious if you see any parallels between China and North Korea, and is Kim Jong-un just trying to follow Xi Jinping, like borrowing from the playbook, or do you think this is caused by something domestic?
Yeah. Thank you for great questions. As you said, not only China, but I define, scholars who study populism in foreign affairs now think, for example, Trump is populist, and Xi Jinping can be kind of categorized as populist, I think. So actually, this is kind of global phenomenon, the populism. So how we can link. So is there any characteristics of populist leaders in conducting foreign affairs, for example? So that was my core question. And I definitely, I think your comment was very good. So Xi Jinping, by conducting anti-corruption measure, anti-corruption movement, he gave response to people. Like he was very responsive to the people, but he didn't take the responsibility by himself. But he's just those elites were bad. So I think that is kind of strategy that populists may have used in general, kind of, because Trump, for example, he should be responsible of the bad economy, but he's China or elite establishment, and I'm listening to you, the people. So he always called people, but actually that is the president's role to solve the economy issue or every issue. But he just, I think that is very good. And also writing this paper, I thought about whether there is any authoritarian populist kind of characteristics we can find. I mean, because but So there is something that I need to look further. But sometimes, for example, Trump, we think he also has authoritarian parts. I mean, when we talk about him. So anyway, I think it's good to compare North Korea and China. Thank you for your question, for reminding me to where to look at.
Good. So I have a question as well for the that's okay. So,
I also have a question for you.
we're going to go ahead first.
I mean, to
Okay, I'll just yeah. So to what extent is there really a link between a global phenomenon of populism rising and North Korea's choice of choosing populism in the past decades?
that is also very good case. So you're I think Kim Jong-un came to power and then he effectively used populism as one of the strategies to evolve his country. But I'm still thinking how he conceived of that one, because actually part of those populist strategy was used by Kim Il-sung, for example. Kim Il-sung also mentions so much people and cared about people's living. But when Kim Jong-un came to power, my assumption is that he needed to replace military first, so the military base of power to something else, to people in general. So and populism suited it very well. And then I think he applied it. So my analysis is like Kim Jong-un, as soon as he came to power, he in his first public speech, he talked about raising people's, living standard and everything. Started to use the people component, and very interestingly, there's a global trend of populism. So, I think, so people in general worry about economic condition is maybe the global phenomenon, we feel. So that is shared globally, maybe. So after neoliberalism, maybe we are living in an era like people care about their economic condition, their well-being, and then those components are easily used by leaders, and then leaders are populists. That is the enemy of explanation, and then anyway, is effectively using this, even though it's under very personal authoritarian measure, which is interesting.
Thank you very much. Yeah, would you like to?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to ask someone else the last question. My apologies. So one for Mr. Kang, Dr. Kang, Mr.
Yes.
All right. So I really found it interesting that you took something like ontological security that's supposed to be like about continuity and positive, stable emotions, creating meaning in life. But if we imagine life in North Korea, I don't think anyone imagines positive, stable emotions when you don't necessarily know where your food is coming from, or if you might say the wrong thing, you might end up in a labor camp or some other horrible outcome.
Yeah.
So, but you kind of turned it on its head and said, well, all of the struggle they go through also provides them with some sense of continuity and meaning, which is a really bizarre way of looking at ontological security, but I thought it was really creative. So, in that vein, where do you think North Korean ontological security comes from? Like, what's its source?
This is actually a really interesting question because it relates to my other reason for it, which is entirely on how does North Korea constitute its ontological security through its own crisis management. So, but it's an interesting question also because when you bring up North Korea as poor living conditions and all that, that's on the ontological severity of the people. But in North Korea, the people not really. I mean, like Dr. Jung says, it's people first. But it's people first as articulated or perpetuated by the government. Really, like when we look at North Korea as a state, you try to perceive the state of political security. You could argue maybe more convincingly that in government and the government organs form with the coherence of state political security. And through that, how they justify their continuity, their presence and their routines and habits is with trying to create a status quo. And in that status quo, you really expect to hold the difference and all that. And as Mr. Yeung pointed out, with the whole embedment anxieties and when to use provocation. This is why we see, for example, when they are feeling senses that the things have changed quickly, then they start to be more provocative of the exercises and all that. Yeah. And so that's how crisis narrative actually become very constitutive of that one. Thanks for your question.
You're welcome. All right, and I'm really sorry. I'm just going to squeeze in one last question for our online panelists. I apologize. Firstyarinda, is that right?
Yes.
So, first of all, last year I published a book chapter that said a lot of what you were saying about how, depending on the political spectrum, who's in power, how the behavior and the confidence building and the interaction between North and South Korea changes wildly. So I had a hard time coming up with a question because I just agree with most of what you said. But looking at, I assume you follow the policies of the current government and President Yoon's audacious plan. What do you think? And I'm asking you to predict the future, so I know it's not fair. But what do you think will be the outcome of the current government's policy towards North Korea?
Okay, so it's gone with the President Yeung right now with the currency of his presidential, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, yeah. If with current conditions and with we can say that President Yeung count as conservative ones. I think the conditions still had a hard time, and this is not only because the personality of the president itself and the continuity of the previous policy, but also we can see that from the North Korea side, Kim Jong-un also make I can say it's a progressive motions, progressive actions, because he gives more attentions to offensive gestures towards the proliferations, towards the publish of her daughters as maybe not successor, but that already gives certain meanings toward the capability of the state under woman's capability to run this authoritarian country, such as like that. And I think that's also have to become considerations to the South Korean governments nowadays. I think that's part of my explanations.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. We are a bit past the time, so I apologize for that. But thank you very much for all the panelists.